Welcome back, everybody, to the Weird and Strong podcast. I'm your host, Jeremy Grinsteiner. As always, I'm really excited about today's episode. We've got Chris Marhefka joining us today. It was amazing to get to talk to him again, and it was a great conversation that I'm excited to bring to you guys. Chris is a master coach and retreat facilitator, and he gets to share his journey on how he became who he is. So with that, let's get weird. All right. We've got Chris Marhefka with us today, the legend. How are you doing today, man?
I'm doing fantastic, Jeremy. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, thank you so much for being here. As we do with all of our guests, we got to start it off with a weird question. I got a good one for you today. This one I've been thinking about all day when I was on my walk. What shape is your peripheral vision?
Peripheral. Ooh. I would say it's like an oval, like a football. Yeah. Yeah, I would say it's like the shape of a football.
Shape of a football.
Uh-huh.
That's cool. You came to that one real easy.
Yeah.
I was walking around. This was one of those ones where I was like, is this like a quantum physics, quantum mechanics type of thing where I'm like, the more I observe it, the more it changes. So like,
that's true.
The more I was thinking about it, like the more square it would get, the more I would focus on the square shape, the more oval it would get. I was like, this is weird.
Ooh, I like that.
Yeah.
Yeah. And if you really pay attention to it, you can actually get a 360. It's more awareness, but yeah, love that question.
It's awesome. Yeah. And as we do, we're here to talk about all the things that make Chris weird and strong. So we'll just open it up right away. Chris, what are the things that make you weird in the world? The ways that you show up unconventionally, less than normal, the ways that were unexpected. Open it up to you on that side.
Yeah. I would say I start with just knowing who I am first. I think that's probably the first important step in being quote unquote weird and not normal is knowing who you are and then just expressing that uniqueness. For me, I am unapologetically, authentically a wild man. First, I walk around shoeless, shirtless all the time. I actually do a lot of my calls shirtless. I put on a shirt for this one, but yeah, super wild, very, very connected to nature. And then also not normal in the sense that I live my life deeply connected to people, which I think is very non-traditional. I don't really do much small talk. I go right to the deep, meaty, juicy part of people's lives. Yeah. And just my everyday day to day, I would look at myself 6 years ago and say with pretty much certainty that I would look at most of my day to day as pretty weird.
Yeah. That was going to be my next question. You know, this connection to nature, this connection to others, this connection to self, was that something that was inherently like that you just grew up with, or was that something that you grew into?
No, definitely grew into. And I would say the nature came first. That was actually my entry point into a lot of this, knowing myself and connecting myself. I started, since I was a kid, I used to run around again barefoot in the woods when I was growing up in Virginia, and our house backed up to like a nature preserve, and we actually walked. It was an amazing childhood. We walked through the woods on this trail to elementary school. Wow. Like, what an amazing childhood for a young boy. And so I spent a lot of time in the woods. And then as I got older in my teens and 20s, I spent a lot of time backpacking, camping, and hiking. And so I did a good section, about almost half the Appalachian Trail. I've spent a lot of time in the Rocky Mountains, and that was really my connection. I would say my escape first is what it what it was initially was from like the chaos of my daily life. So just get out in nature. And then eventually it became a way to more deeply connect and slow down and get more clear in my life. Um, yeah, I've spent, man, I've never done the math, but well over 100, more than that, actually, now that I think about it, well over 100, multiple hundred nights in the wilderness. And yeah, that's where I started to learn that there was a intelligence beyond just what was bouncing around in my head. I used to sit, I still do. I mean, I'm fascinated by nature. I sit and watch like ants for hours. I can watch a blade of grass and just like watch that for hours. And I learned so much in doing that, just by giving myself space and stillness and time. I would say that's pretty weird for most people.
Yeah. When we talk about that and think about that on that path, like, and I've had my own reservations. Like, I used to describe myself as like an indoor nerd. Like, I'm okay looking out at the nature of the outside. Where do you think that resistance for a lot of people comes from, of getting out in nature?
Well, I think if you're not raised with it, there's a like an innate drive in our culture to control our environment. And we do this with the way that we build our houses and our cities and our jobs. Everything is very like boxed in a way. And in some ways, that's a really positive thing for people. It makes life a lot more controllable, a lot more predictable. But also, I think that it leads people to miss out on some of the beauty of the unexpected. And so I think it comes from that place. It's just a place of not knowing, not believing they know the skills on how to get out there and just what they'll do out there. And like anything, though, I mean, it just starts with trying and experiencing. So I like to bring a lot of friends out into the wilderness and on trips like that, because every single time without fail, no matter how busy someone is, no matter how crazy their life is, within like 2 nights of spending out at the pace of nature, like everyone slows down. The first one is like a little bit chaotic and they're like, oh, I don't know what to do. Where's my phone? Like, what's going on?
I feel like I'm supposed to be doing something, going,
yeah.
I gotta check in with somebody.
And then very quickly, like everyone slows down and finds a deeper sense of stillness in themselves. And I think also a lot of people have gotten really under this belief that we are separate from nature, and we're separate from the dirt and the water and everything. And actually, I mean, we come from, our bodies are all 100% carbon of the earth. And there's like this nature that a lot of people have, this programmed nature to create distance between us because it's dangerous or nature will harm us. And I mean, nature is wild. I think that's part of it, is that when you really spend time out there, you realize like how wild nature is, how unpredictable it is to us as humans, and also how dangerous it can be. But I think that by design helps us be more intentional, more conscious, more aware of our surroundings, which helps us in everyday life for sure.
Absolutely. Yeah, I was going to say, what for people who haven't really made those types of experiences, what could you suggest are ways that they could start to implement some practices in getting into nature more regularly?
Yeah, I mean, the first, easiest, most tangible is just to walk outside in your neighborhood or your park, bare feet on the grass, walking through like a wooded area. And that would be like like level 1, level 2 is just go out on like a day hike somewhere that's secluded. You're not going to see a lot of people. Um, and yeah, the barrier to entry is basically zero if you can get over breaking your normal routines.
Getting out the
And
front door.
yeah, just literally getting out the front door and going for a walk is probably the easiest thing people can do.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
I believe that 100%. You know, before getting my dog, I hadn't really walked my neighborhood at all. And
Mm,
over the past 3 years of like, I was like, oh, I didn't even realize these parks were here. I didn't even know where this road went. Like you
mm-hmm.
just get to explore
Yeah.
your own immediate surroundings outside of your walls,
Mm-hmm.
which is great.
Yeah. You just brought up another thing that I love that I have this skill, and it's this like self-awareness of surroundings.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of people are so used to navigating by their phones, like quickly going to their phones anytime there's a problem or they need to figure something out. And one of the best things you could do is I used to do this all the time. I used to be a distance runner as well and run trails, and I would just intentionally get lost.
Mm-hmm.
And I would have my phone in my little pack, but if I ever needed it, but it builds a sense of resiliency and awareness and a skill set of like, oh, I can always find my way back home or navigate without this magical supercomputer we have in our hands.
Yeah.
Um, it's just like a great skill for life, but it also just builds a lot of confidence in yourself, especially for men, especially for protectors and providers. I mean, it's it's a really basic thing.
And I would venture to guess that it also helps in that slowing down process as well.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That is for me, one of my favorite things to do, like if I'm in a new city, is to do
Mm-hmm.
exactly that. Just
Mm-hmm.
start walking in a direction.
Mm-hmm.
If I end up somewhere sketchy, I'll figure it out,
Mm-hmm.
and get into that exploration type of a mode.
Mm-hmm.
And being able
Yeah.
to do that allows me and forces me to slow down and look at
Mm-hmm.
where I am and look at my surroundings and
Mm-hmm.
experience the full gamut of what is in my surroundings.
Yeah, I love that. I have a fun game that I play, whether it's in the city or in nature, and it involves the phone just because it helps for randomness. But I call it a synchronicity walk, and you just start out and you glance at your phone, and basically the last number, so 0 through 9, um, and you just hold that number in your awareness. And then the first thing that you see that reminds you of that number, it could be a street sign, could be like 3 clumps of trees together, it could be whatever. You just work your way towards it and then see what that brings you. And then maybe a few minutes later, you glance at your phone again. You're like, oh, it's now 27. And you look at 7 and you're looking for 7 somewhere. And so it's a good way to just wander aimlessly. It's like wandering with purpose. But you can find yourself, like, I always find myself in like super interesting, super weird situations that I never would have gotten into otherwise. So it's a fun little game.
Yeah, that's awesome. Coming back to that connection to self, connection to others, was that something that was that you had to cultivate over time, or is that something that was just innately part of who you are?
Yeah, 100% I cultivated that. And I would actually say that I've had this reflection from people that I knew in my past. I came off as very like closed, intimidating, distant person. And it really came just because I didn't know how to connect with other people. I wasn't connected to myself. Everything was very mental. And it came for me really out of necessity when I realized that like none of my relationships had any depth. My romantic relationship, my marriage, we weren't really connected. We didn't have any vulnerability. And it really like slapped me in the face when I separated and eventually got divorced from my wife. I was like, wow, I actually have no real connection with people. And it wasn't that I thought of myself as better than, like, it's not that I didn't want to connect with other people. It just, I didn't really know how was more the challenge for me. And then also I didn't know what that would look like. There was like an uncertainty to that. Like I got really used to relating to people over things, like over sports, over drinking, over working out, over whatever casual surface conversation we were having, and just got used to that. Until I realized there's a lot more.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. It's almost like, I think of this every once in a while as the like, there's the corporate face when people have like their desk jobs or whatever, their work mask that they put on.
Mm-hmm.
It's almost like that same mask gets carried into relationships, whether they are romantic, personal, friendship, whatever it is. It's almost like we keep that same amount of barrier of like, I'm going to keep you at arm's length because I don't know what's on the other side.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's just a nature, like I was saying earlier about how we build our houses and cities and stuff. It's just really a nature of our culture is one of closed off.
Yeah.
Is like we draw these borders. This is like my lawn. This is my house. This is my desk. This is and what it does is it creates these artificial boundaries that are really rigid. And so it's not about having no boundaries. Like that would be crazy if just strangers were walking in and out of your house, but learning how to titrate between how do we let people that we want into them. And the same goes for the masks that we wear is, it's one thing if you're in a situation where you're really uncomfortable or you're in a, maybe a dangerous area or whatever. Yeah, maybe have your alerts up, your strong walls and boundaries up, but that's not the case when you're with your loved ones and your best friends and everything. And so learning how to titrate by taking those down, or softening them a little bit, to let people in. And it's definitely a practice, and it's one that, I think takes a level of courage and bravery. Because you're admitting that, I'm okay, I'm safe enough in this environment with these people, and I can go to a little bit more uncertainty here, and that takes bravery.
Yeah, absolutely. While you were talking about that, I was remembering some descriptions from Sebastian Junger's book Tribe. We talked about, like, you think about New York City, and we have these stacks of apartment buildings. And you have thousands of people stacked on each other that have no idea who's next to them or above them or below them. You think about like these containers around each individual person. And, even when we find ourselves in quote unquote dangerous positions or areas, what I found is like, get to know your neighbors.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, you might be afraid to go and like say hi or whatever, but like, every time that I personally have felt at dis-ease around my surroundings, if I could just say hi to that person that's next to me, that lives in that building or that unit next to me, and have some sort of a relationship, everybody's guard just kind of drops a little bit more.
Yeah.
And everybody feels a little bit more safe, or the perception of it comes back.
Yeah. Yeah, everyone wants that level of connection, but it definitely takes some sort of leadership from someone to open it up, to be that person to open up the door. There's a study that was done that studied quality of life, and well above all else, the factor that determined the highest quality of life for people was how many interactions they had with people that they knew.
Yeah.
So basically, like, how often do you run into someone randomly that you know or are familiar with? And it just, it's more of like what you think of as a community rather than this like city environment, like you described New York City with that many people. I think the problem is actually that people become more of a burden and a nuisance to you rather than like that quality of life, pleasurable experience, like joyful experience to run into someone you know.
Yeah. Or it puts the barriers of that your chances of running into that person are so much lower.
Yeah,
Yeah, I mean, you
exactly.
look at small communities all around the world
Hmm.
of, even in small town America,
Hmm.
people used to just come up to the corner market, the corner store,
Hmm.
cafe, the gas station, whatever it is, and run into each other and talk and then
Hmm.
move on with their day.
Hmm.
Yeah. And
Yeah, that's how it was. I was just living down in Mexico for like 3 to 4 months, and you'd see the same vendors. Go to the farmers market every Sunday, see the same vendors, talk to them, get to know them. You'd see the same people on your beach walk and hanging out. You see them at the events, at the restaurants, and yeah, it's a really fun. It's a welcoming experience as opposed to a like a disconnected. Uh, yeah, it feels like you belong rather than you're just visiting or
mm,
you're in someone else's territory.
yeah, I think
Hmm.
it's like, if you think too on, when people go on vacations and they get their vacation friends, or you like,
Hmm.
even if they go to something like a resort,
Yeah.
they start
Hmm.
hanging around the same people.
Hmm.
Like, I would hypothesize that that's all the same thing.
Yep.
And
Hmm.
then we get back to our regular lives. It's like, oh, that vacation life was so great. I was having these connections with people. Um, do you have any suggestions for people who may be feeling that or have that major disconnect, of ways that they can start to bring that connection back into their lives, or
Yeah.
maybe for the first time?
Yeah. Smile. Smile for sure. Again, there's studies about that as well. It's supports you by smiling, just by the act of smiling, but it also creates immediate connection with people and intimacy, even if there's no words exchanged. So I smile at strangers all the time. Say hi to strangers, um, and yeah, there was a practice I used to do. I admit I don't do it so much anymore, but I would, when I was out in a new place or a place I didn't know people, I would smile and I would like wish happiness for people.
Mm,
It seems so weird, like the barista at your coffee shop or this random stranger that's walking on the sidewalk, just like smiling and like wishing that they have a great day, hoping they have a great day. And it brings so much joy to me, and that comes out on my face. So it's not even a fake smile. It's
yeah,
it's a, like a real genuine like desire for them to find happiness. So that's that's a fun one. Yeah, yeah, that's like the easiest entry point.
very cool.
Hmm.
Coming back to your story,
Hmm.
you had identified this disconnect in your personal life
Hmm.
with others, with yourself. Talk us through, what did that path look like to get to who you are today, and
Mm,
where you're going towards?
yeah, thank you. Thank you. Um, yeah, I'll say I was experiencing a lot of disconnection from people. I felt um, no real intimacy with my partner. There was a lot of, whether it was with my romantic partner or friends, it was just like, how's your day? Good, good, good. It was just my standard answer for everything. No, good. Um, and there was like there was a just a knowing that um, there was more to life than this. And, it came when I had a big moment that changed my life completely. And this is actually before the divorce. That was the second big moment, but big moment when I had this traumatic brain injury, is stress induced, actually, is what it came out. I was just like under this enormous amount of stress, and this brain injury forced me to sit by myself. Like I couldn't work because I couldn't think. I couldn't think clearly. I had this headache all day, 24/7 for 7 months. And then I couldn't work out, which is my other distraction, because I couldn't raise my heart rate above resting. And so I was forced to sit with myself. And that was the process that really helped me start to connect to myself. I even started to have these like little mini conversations in my head. had these conversations with my body when it was in pain. I had conversations with my what I would call depression at the time. I would just have conversations with it, and I would ask it questions like what are you here for? Like why'd you show up? He's like, what do you need? What can I do for you?
Yeah.
And then what that started to do was get me a deeper connection to myself and listening to my own inner knowing. And then I would admittedly like start asking similar type questions to other people. Like, what are you feeling? Like, what's going on in there? Like what's that pain about? What's that sadness about?
Mm-hmm.
And what it was because it was an invitation for myself to go there, that became an invitation for others to go there as well. So it's like, oh, like I'm giving you permission in this conversation to not just talk about sports and whatever, but we can go a little deeper. I did some emotional healing work where I realized like all the ways that I was showing up was just these programmed patterns. And when I stopped doing them and I started doing other things that I actually wanted, like connecting with others, I found a positive result in my life. I was happier. I was more joyful, felt more connected. I I learned that I didn't have to suffer in silence. And I also had a lot of compassion and realized that most people were also suffering. And so that was, I would say about 5 years ago. And then, it was starting on my path. And then I had the second event, which was the separation from my wife, which just challenged me at another level. And the big lesson that it was forcing me to learn was to get to know myself outside of the labels of business owner or entrepreneur or husband or friend or what. It's just like all these labels that I was comfortable in. I had to start to learn who I was without those things.
Mm-hmm.
And that was really, man, an ever evolving journey that I would say I'm still and will always be on, is getting to know myself at that deeper level. The difference is now is that I feel completely safe to do it. Like I know who I am at this point and I'm very solid in it. And so I don't have any, I don't have any doubts about how I share myself. And I just recall, like you said about work, I had dozens of masks. Like I had a mask with this specific person. I had a mask in this environment. And I had a mask with this relationship. And it was exhausting.
Mm-hmm.
It was really exhausting to keep that up.
Have to remember every individual persona that you're supposed to be.
Yeah. It's like you're playing like a dozen different roles in a movie in the same movie.
Yeah.
And you have to bounce between scene and scene and like remember your lines and like remember your storyline and like, oh, how do I interact with this person? Yeah.
At that exact same mental image. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. It's nearly impossible to do well.
Mm-hmm.
And I was barely hanging on. And when I realize now how much energy I put into being all these versions of myself that weren't actually myself, I don't know how I had space for anything in my life, to like keep up these facades and to play all these roles. Yeah. So that was some of the pivotal points on the journey. And as I started to learn more and go deeper into myself, I realized there was a lot of beliefs there that were running the show. Like I couldn't even look myself in the mirror because I didn't like who I was. I didn't accept who I was. I didn't love myself. I didn't think I was worthy to be successful, to have a relationship. I really was hard on myself. I beat myself up a lot. And so I learned over time how to unwind those, to discover where they came from, and then to start rewriting them.
Mhm.
And fortunately, that process is actually really simple. That's what I do now in coaching and mentoring and working with people, is help people rewrite those things. And it's a really simple process. It just requires a commitment to doing it. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And is that a commitment to doing it, like a just show up one time and wipe your hands and I'm good, I'm fixed, I'm cured?
That's a fantastic softball question, and no, I mean, from lifting and from working out and from playing music, and many people can relate to this in some area of their life if they're really good at something or they've spent 10 years doing it. They didn't start that way. Like, you started as a white belt, you started as a pure beginner, and you start uh actually, I'll say, if you start with like curiosity and openness, it happens faster. You
Mhm.
learn it quicker, and then there's a lot less frustration. And that was the hard part for me, is that I was like so serious and rigid about getting things right and like doing it the right way. That was actually, it took me a long time in this process because I wanted to do it right. And I had all these ideas of what that was. But
Mhm.
when I started to bring some more lightness to it, I actually bring silliness to it. I smile, I laugh at myself all the time. Like, oh, that was me doing that thing again. Like,
Mhm.
I used to have funny, like pattern interrupt words. I used to teach people this all the time. Like walrus was one of mine. Like, oh, there's that walrus again. And it was just like this really stupid, silly thing to label a pattern that I was doing. But what it would do is it would snap me out of like the seriousness of it,
Mhm.
and allowed me to just let it be there, forgive it, accept it, and then just move on. It's like a child playing. It's like, they don't, when they're playing whatever with whatever toy, they don't really have an outcome or an expectation in mind. They're just doing whatever they want. And that changes every moment. They're like, oh, this is what I'm doing. And there's a lightness to it. There's no like, oh, you failed at playing with the blocks.
Yes.
Um, yeah. And we start teaching kids that, though, pretty young.
Mhm. We do.
Unfortunately, and that's where it comes from. That's where it comes from for all of us, is that we're taught at some point in childhood that you've got to do it this way. Like, this is the way to do it.
Well, if you
And
don't do it the right way, you're going to have to go back and redo it, and then you're going to take longer to get to where you're supposed to go.
huh,
And everybody
yeah,
wants to get there fast. It's always
yeah.
I had a great discussion. I've had this discussion with a few people the past month. It's like there's this idea that we people get to those big numbers in their age.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, I'm going to be 30 next year. I'm going to be 40, whatever that is. And it's like, I'm so afraid of that. And it's like, well, because I haven't achieved something, or I
Yeah.
haven't gotten to where I want to be. And it's like,
Mm-hmm.
well, what's the race? I
Yeah.
mean, we all know what the end is for all of us.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Why are we trying to race towards it?
Uh-huh. Yeah, yeah. There's this. I use the analogy of the scoreboard. That's why our culture likes things like business and sports, is because they're very objective. There's a number involved. There's like, who's winning, who's losing, and that actually makes people feel comfortable. But in life, there's really no objective scoreboard.
Mhm.
And in fact, when the most successful people I know, and I use successful in the terms of with life, their scoreboards have a lot more to do with the quality of their time, the fulfillment, their the amount of presence they bring to their life and their relationships and their families, and there seems to be, at least in my world, it seems to be changing from a lot of these objective measures and to more of these subjective ones of like, this is actually how I want to live my life. And I'm going to go ahead and create my own scoreboard.
Mhm.
And my scoreboard means that I don't work more than 3 hours a day, or I spend an hour with my kids every night, just purely focused, or I work out an hour by myself, like whatever your scoreboard is. The secret is that you get to create your own. And unfortunately, a lot of people don't realize that secret that's not so secret.
Mhm.
Um, they don't realize it until much later in life, which is why when they poll people on their deathbed, the average person will speak about the regrets of the things that they didn't do. No one says, I wish I worked more, or I wish I made $10 million more. No one says that.
Mm-hmm.
No one says that, but that's how we teach our children. And then that's how we carry ourselves through life. And so there's a lot of wisdom we can learn from people at the end of their life. But unfortunately, this is like a whole nother tangent. We actually ship away that wisdom. We actually segment off the elderly in our population, which is really sad because there's so much wisdom there.
Yeah.
From people that have done it.
Yeah.
They've literally done life, and they're trying to tell us, like,
this is how to do it.
Yeah, this is not the way to do it. Like, trust me, like, I'm here. I've got like a couple years, couple days left. Like,
I think there's
trust me.
Thing that we learned, especially over the past few generations, of like, screw you, old man. What do you know? And then we all come to the same conclusions eventually, or similar conclusions. Maybe it's a different flavor, but we all get there. Just like you said, the regret, or the looking at, well, you know, my quality of life, or my life as a whole would have been better if I had done this over this.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I see, like all of these things that we see as negative, like resentment and fear, or regret and resentment, fear, sadness, like not being fulfilled. Like, I actually see them as really positive, like almost like alarms going off, or signals. Like, think about on your car when your check engine light goes on. It's like when you're feeling sadness day after day, or you're feeling resentment in your life. It's really just that check engine light of saying, like, look, it's time to take a look at this and make some changes, so that you don't continue this pattern. You don't continue to have this. Like, there's no rule that says just because you've been what people would call depressed their whole life doesn't mean you have to continue being depressed for the remainder of it, or angry, or resentful, or whatever that quote unquote negative emotion is. It's just showing you, like, hey, there's something to look at. There's like those funny memes that say, like, if you go on, like, if you're miserable in your life and you go on vacation and you're super happy, you don't have depression. You just have a shitty life.
Yeah.
And like, and it's funny in like in meme sense, but there's a lot of truth to that. It's like, why do we need to escape our lives to enjoy our lives? And so that's really like a value that I draw a line in the sand for myself and the people I work with, is like, don't wait till tomorrow. Don't wait until next year. Like, don't wait until you're on your deathbed to address these things that are staring us all in the face, to be honest.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, like, to bring it back, if we're all racing to the end, and yet we're still saying, oh, tomorrow I'll figure it out. Next week, I'll start next week. I'll start next month. Mm-hmm. I'll start when I make $1,000 more per month, or whatever, whatever metric. Mm-hmm. Like, for me, very, very, going back to what you had said, is like getting curious about that. Of why am I thinking that? Why am I saying I'll start tomorrow? And being able to explore that. It's like, is this because I'm just really comfortable where this is, even though I'm saying I'm not?
Yeah.
Or am I disconnected with the actual feeling of it? Because I know the change is going to require some effort. Yeah.
Yeah, it's just like a really just a general understanding of humans, is that we have this thing called homeostasis. And from a biological standpoint, homeostasis is just, we're always getting pulled back to our comfort zone. We'll think of it that way, the normal operating procedure comfort zone. And from a biological standpoint, very, very useful. But we're all that are listening to the podcast, we're far beyond biological survival. Like, let's be honest, like, maybe our ancestors were like many generations ago, but we're not today. And so we have to recognize that is a very deep pattern in all of us to stay in this comfort zone.
Mm-hmm.
And so one of the practices that's really useful is to, in as many areas of your life as often as possible, go into the unknown, go into uncomfortable situations. And so a lot of people, I really like the movement towards, like, people are in the ice bath now. Like, I've been ice bathing for like 10 years, but it's super popular now. But what it's doing for people is getting a daily stimulus of being uncomfortable. Because that sensation of, like, I don't want to get in there, and I still have it, of like, I don't want to get in there. And then you get in there and you calm yourself and you calm your breath. You realize it's actually not a big deal. It's the exact same sensation when we have an uncomfortable conversation we know we need to have, or a change that we want to make in our life, but we're afraid to. It's the same response. It's the exact same response. Calm yourself, bring yourself to center, know that it's going to be okay, and you move forward anyways. And so the more often you can get uncomfortable, the better. That's why I've done physically challenging things my whole life. I didn't realize that's why I was doing, but it was like conditioning me for living an amazing life, because I'm not afraid to go off and travel to a foreign country and meet new people and learn a new language. I'm not afraid to dive into this new business, and I'm not afraid to, back in the day, like, go ask that woman out. I have an amazing partner now, but it's like all these fears that build up, that are just 1 degree outside of our comfort zone. And so the more we can practice that in really simple ways, the better. So I like working out too. I mean, working out, it's just like, we all know it's good for us. And so, it gets to be fun. Don't get me wrong. Every time I'm like done with a workout, I love it, but I still I'm like, this is uncomfortable. This
work,
and I rewrite that. Sometimes. It's still work. It's still work. And so, anything that really gets you in that uncomfortable state is really valuable.
Yeah. It was fun. You're talking about, we're so far removed from the basic needs of survival. I was just delving down into some ancestral work, and like even just looking at, I was looking at just even my grandparents' stories. Like one of my grandmothers lived in a sod house, a house made of dirt and grass on the prairie. And I was like, what? Like, in comparison, she died not even all that long ago, back in 2012. Like, that wasn't that long removed. And to think about the modern lifestyle that I live right now, of the ability to hop on a plane and be across the planet in half a day, to talk to somebody like you thousands of miles away, and that we can record it and so that everybody else can hear it. Like, mind-bogglingly amazing, in that we take a lot of that for granted. And when we take it all for granted, it's easy to get into that same space that you're talking about, of this fear of going beyond, or fear of going to that next thing. There's always that what if question that pops up. And we're always asking, what if the worst thing happens?
And I think we're really good. I think we're some of the most adaptable animals. I think we are the most adaptable, to be honest. If you look at all the ways humans live across the globe compared to any other animal, we're incredibly adaptive. The unique thing that we have, though, is this self-reflective ability to reflect on why we're adaptive. Like, what are we actually adapting to? And we have this ability to challenge the reason why we're doing things, because most animals in nature are in survival, and they're just going moment to moment. And we actually have the ability, the incredible gift, to be transcended above that, and to think differently. And so I think that is one of the, and we don't have to get into this, but that it's like one of the challenges of human advancement is, I'm an incredible optimist, like a long-term optimist. I think that all of the things that we're doing have the potential to have positive benefits, but we everything that is new also comes with a downside to it. Everything that we do comes to with a downside and an upside.
Mm-hmm.
And so we have to do our best to leverage the upside of everything we're bringing into our world, and then also be hyper aware of the risks and not just go unconscious to it. Like we've done, honestly, we've done that a lot with technology in our lifetime. We've gone unconscious to what this is doing to us. And I think that if you're paying attention, people are seeing it. People are seeing what's happening with health and human connection and mental health and emotional health. But this is where we get back to like the first question about nature and what do we do? And it's like, it's almost as if we forgot the ways in which that worked for your grandparents and the ways in work for generations before. And every time I'm stressed, if I just get out in the sun, bare feet on the grass for like 5 minutes, I feel way better.
Yeah.
Like there's technology biohacking, and then there's natural biohacking. And that's kind of like, well, I'm glad we started with that nature piece, because there's zero barrier to entry. It's like, if you're caught up in some of the negative consequences of living a modern lifestyle, it may mean you need to swing a little bit to the other side to offset some of those. And then you can kind of like swing back and forth on that pendulum until you find your happy medium that works for you. But it's like this idea that the pendulum never swings back, and it does. We can't just keep pushing forward with, we always say all gas, no brakes. Can't keep pushing forward with this all gas mentality in one direction and not think there's going to be downstream consequences. And unfortunately, that's how a lot of people view the human experience. And it has all these like these dead bodies in our path, like all these consequences that we leave behind us and we just forget about. That's why they say history repeats itself. It's not because the humans are exactly the same. It's just we forget the lessons. It's like we don't actually learn the lessons.
Or there's a bit of hubris involved of like, well, I can do it better.
Yeah. We're smarter than them. We've got more stuff. We've got all this
so much more advanced.
Yeah.
And it's like, in reality, it's like, are we truly like, have we learned things? Are we doing very, very different things than 10,000 years ago?
Yeah.
Yes. And also humans haven't really actually changed all that much in that entire time.
Nope.
The genetic makeups may look different, but in reality, from a physiologic perspective, we're exactly the same.
Yeah.
Something so like as like a summation of a lot of things that you were talking about, could it be simply put that a lot of these things that people struggle with are like in the march towards in like progress with technology or modern lifestyles? Would you then say that intentionality is like the major key to all of this?
Yeah, 100%. Intentionality, bringing some level of maturity. And by maturity, I just mean like a contemplation of the consequences of these things. I mean, it's the law of cause and effect. I mean, everything we do is going to have an effect, and it has a cause. And so it's just paying attention to it before we do it. Honestly, the way I joke about it, the way we collectively move forward as a globe, as an 8 billion population, appears much more childlike than it does appear from a mature standpoint. Like we do something, we're like, shit, I broke the thing, whatever. Well, and then rather than saying like, why did I break the thing? What should I do different? We're like, here's another thing. Yeah. We're like, shit, I broke that too. And so, yeah, it definitely takes a level of maturity, especially from our leaders. Like that's why I'm deeply passionate about doing leadership work, because it doesn't, this is like in the study of like development and consciousness, it doesn't take like every one of the 8 billion to consider like the deep consequences of like making this massive decision, but it does take a few people that are really conscious and aware of it. So this is where like leaders in industry and leaders in governments and stuff come in, and we hope that these people would be doing this. But from my perspective, it's lost that, like, it's lost, if we ever had it, that really long-term view of like, what will this actually be for our children and our children's children and their children. And the good news, though, is like, I also have a belief we don't necessarily, like, we don't need all 8 billion people to change. Is like, you don't actually have to change all of your external reality for your life to be different. You actually just need to change in the way that you view things and how you carry yourself. And what that'll do is that'll start shifting your reality, which may not save the world, but it will give you a better chance of creating the world that you want. And that ripples out. I say that on the retreats all the time. There's this ripple effect to you being a this more mature version of yourself. I use that word mature a lot. And when you start asking those questions of yourself, you start asking those questions of others, you start thinking differently, you start being more open. People you interact with will pick up on that. And so that impacts them. And then they may pick up on it more, and they may impact other people. So it's like this ripple effect throughout our life. It doesn't have to be top down.
Yeah.
It would be easier if it were, but I'm not counting on that, to be honest.
Leaving it up to chance. But you said, those things, they won't save the world. I would argue that they do, because of that ripple effect.
They do.
We talked about this at the retreat. One of the core tenets that I follow through is this idea of tikkun olam, of bringing this forward into the rest of the world.
Yeah.
What we do today, we don't know what that's going to affect 1,000 years from now.
Yeah. Yeah. And you just nailed it. And thank you for correcting that, because what I meant to say is it won't change the world today, but that's one of the most generous, most serving things we could do, is to show up today knowing that we will likely never see the full benefits of our actions today. Yeah. That's like the most mature leadership that you can really be in. It's like, I'm gonna plant this. It's like I'm gonna plant this redwood tree, and it's gonna grow to be 800 years old, and then generations from now they're gonna sit under it and bear the beauty and the fruits of this. And I'm never gonna see that. Like, it's barely gonna be a sapling by the time I die. But it's like that type of mentality.
Yeah, there's I had a conversation with a rabbi at one point, and it's like, that is truly our immortality. Yes. Like, you think back to your lineage, like even go back 5 to 6 generations. How many people are involved in that lineage? It turns into thousands upon thousands of people, not even that far back. And so, all the things that we do today and the way that we carry forward, huge ripples forward.
And this is to tie back to some of our earlier conversations about like finding yourself and like knowing yourself. And one of the challenges that people face is that they're in this like race, like we were talking about earlier, is that oftentimes we are just desiring to make our mark on the world. We're desiring to be the one that does this thing and makes this change. And actually using that word mature again, like one of the most mature things that we can do is like be insignificant in the results. Like that long-term like approach, like we were just talking about, is 1,000 years from now, 10,000 years from now, like no one's going to remember you. There's not going to be a statue of you. Even if you are the great, like it's not going to happen. Yeah. And so letting go of the attachment of, which is just our ego. It's like, I'm the one that did the thing. I did this thing. Yeah. And when you, like when you truly know yourself and you truly believe in what you're doing and you feel aligned in how you're serving people, that part really does start to melt away. It doesn't disappear, like, no, but it really melts away and it becomes much less significant. It's not the driver's seat anymore.
Yeah. Awesome. Thank you for sharing all of that. This has been an awesome conversation. As we start to wrap things up, is there anything that you would like to bring forward, things that you're doing in the world that you want to share with everybody?
Thank you. Yeah. I would say the best place to find me is on chrismarhefka.com and Chris Marhefka on Instagram to find out about the things I'm doing. No matter when you're listening to this, what I'm currently doing is I run some men's leadership retreats, and I also have a book coming out hopefully in September. That's September 1st is the current date. So those two things, and along with that book, I'll have a new course that's coming out, and a lot of my teachings, I'm starting to really realize what it really boils down to in this men's work that I do, and it's how to embody this archetype of the king, how to discover and how to allow the king to emerge that's in all of us. And I need king from the sense of being loving, being benevolent, being not the powerful guy up on stage like we're used to seeing our leaders, but the one that puts others first, and the one that serves his family and his community, and shows up in a very mature way that considers other people. And so that's really the work that I'm doing is in showing men that energy, that king archetype is within all of us, and it's a few shifts away. It's a few really small shifts away, not necessarily easy shifts, but really small energetic shifts. And I deeply love doing this work because it ripples out. Like, it ripples out to relationships, it ripples out to career and work, it ripples out to how you care for your body, how you care for the planet, and just the people in your life. So
And I will, myself, as the endorsement, I did attend one of Chris's retreats this past December, and it is an experience that is definitely worthwhile, especially for those of us who feel like there is something disconnected, that we're not quite sure what's next. You don't even know what things might come into fruition from something like this. And so if anybody's on the fence of even having a conversation with Chris about that, please do.
Thank you. Thank you so much, brother.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And thank you so much for being here.
Yeah, you're so welcome, man. It's a fun conversation. I love what we got into, and I just appreciate you, and I appreciate your acknowledgement, and just showing up in the world the way you're doing, brother.
Awesome. Thank you so much. With that, stay weird, stay strong, folks. See you next time.